we know if you're here, you care about kids, and you're aware about trafficking, you're aware about the problem of trafficking, and that it's happening in the US. Just a little bit about our organization. We're based in Northern Virginia, and our original goal was to create a safe home for survivors of trafficking. Then we started realizing, trafficking is actually preventable. So we were looking at what causes trafficking, and we're like, we need to prevent this, and we need to find a solution for this. So this course is designed to help parents and basically adults in the community who are interested in protecting kids, to give them the resources to do that. We want to see the entire community engaged in doing that. We want to see people being aware of the red flags that predators wave around, both in person and online. It's really just a basic principle. If you're able to identify something, you're more likely to be able to prevent it. Same like let's say your kid has a cold. If you know the symptoms of a cold, you're going to be more likely to be able to prevent it. You're going to know what causes it. If you're not driving, and if you can do this, we'd love to learn a little bit more about you. Please do know none of this information is shared. It's just so we can get to know you a little better. So let us know, are your kids elementary, middle, high school? Do your kids already have devices, maybe like an iPhone, iPod, iPad? The options, there's so many options. Do you already have a parental control system in place? And feel free to just drop these in the chat. Any ones that you feel that you want to answer. Let us know if you have any immediate concerns about technology, your kids, how they're handling it. And, or if you just want to do this last question, how equipped do you feel to deal with technology on a scale of 1 to 10? Let's say 1 is not equipped at all, and 10 you feel like I am good to go. I don't need any information. If you want to let us know, I'm sure you're not a 1, but maybe you're in between a 1 and a 10. Where do you think you would fall on that scale of being ready to deal with technology, your kids, and the world? A 6? That's good. That's a good number. Right. Well, we want to get you up to at least 9.5. So we're going to try for that. Maybe not just in the next hour, because there is so much information and it's a little bit scary. We're going to dive into it though. So these are some quotes. You go ahead and read these. I'll read them in just a minute though. So Colin Karchner was an activist. He passed away in 2020 of unknown causes, but his vision was to really see kids not being tied to their smartphones, their screens. He was getting these messages so often, and of course he had kids. He didn't want to see this happening to them, so he would go around to schools and he would talk to the kids, and really just delve into why do they feel the need to get iPhones. And so here are some of the things that he was told, and these are just a couple messages of dozens. So one girl told him, "I'm 15 years old and I wish I had never gotten a smartphone. Social media literally changed who I am. Social media teaches girls that they aren't pretty enough." And I'm sure even you ladies as adults, you may have noticed this, just the comparison that we have to deal with being online. Another girl told him 3 years later, after being on social media, "I'm getting treated for 3 different eating disorders along with anxiety." One young girl, she told him, I only ate 500 calories a day. Some days I would just starve myself because I was trying to look like what I saw online, which is really horrific. Of course, that's not healthy. Now, another young girl told him this: "I was given a tablet at age 9. Now I'm 13. Every day I get asked for nudes." Now, let's just step back. That's so horrific. Let's step back and imagine that as adult women. How would we handle that? How would we handle dealing with that on a daily basis? Would that be somewhat debilitating, somewhat exhausting, it would sort of definitely affect how you think about yourself. If that's all you're being asked for, it's going to affect how you're valuing yourself, how your self-worth is, even more so for young girls. Not great. Okay. So Dr. Williams, she's the division head of child and adolescent psychiatry for Texas Children's Hospital. She actually specifically works with children and their families who struggle with social media usage. Now, the children who come to her, on average, they're spending 3 to 6 hours per day on different social media apps. And I just want to let you know that is actually a low average. We are seeing other statistics saying that some teenagers are actually on their phones about 9 hours a day. That is actually a national average, which is, that's not good. Kids, 3 to 6 hours per day on different social media apps. So no matter what you're doing, if you're doing it for 3 to 6 hours a day, it's going to affect you, even if it's something positive. If you're reading for 3 to 6 hours a day, if you're exercising, some people exercise for 3 to 6 hours a day. If you're gardening, if you're playing, it's going to affect you, whether, mentally, physically, emotionally. Social media, 3 to 6 hours a day. So what kids are getting online, they're getting a constant stream of belittling remarks, sexual innuendos. That's what they're getting. Now imagine that as an adult. Let's imagine you're at work, you work 3 to 6 hours a day, and you constantly get belittling remarks and sexual innuendos from your coworkers and boss. I honestly can't even imagine doing that. I would quit. That's what it's like for little kids, though. So if you want to drop these in the chat, I'll go ahead and read through these, but you can probably read faster than I can talk. So you go ahead and drop whatever you want to in the chat. So number 1, our kids play video games. Number 2, our kids have a phone or tablet that connects to the internet. Number 3, our school allows phones at lunch. Number 4, our kids have friends who have phones. Number 5, our kids are allowed to visit friends and they don't have adult supervision 100% of the time. Number 6, I haven't had to make these decisions yet. Maybe you have, a toddler, a young one, and this just doesn't affect you. Over the next 45 minutes or so, we're going to go over 4 major risks that children will have when they have any kind of online or social media, including video games, any kind of interaction there. So the first one that we're going to go through is bullying. So I know you have heard some kind of news story about cyberbullying, how it has affected children. I know there are even movies about it. I mean, it's horrible that we have to have movies about it. So this can happen on social media. Maybe this is public, maybe it's private. This can happen in video games through direct messaging. This can also happen, one quick note about social media connections. So some schools actually have a platform where students can create their groups or whatever and talk about other kids. So unfortunately, one police officer has actually uncovered that boys had created ratings for girls, and so they were rating them based on different things. So hypersexualization, we know this happens. I bet you could give me 5 examples right now of a song you've heard, a pop song you've heard, or a rap artist, or whatever. And they're hypersexualizing women and girls through music. We could take girls' clothing. Everybody knows that you look at girls' clothes and boys' clothes, and there's just like 20% less fabric on girls' clothes. It's ridiculous. This list at the bottom of the slide. This is like an overview of the risks that kids can have through online tests. Now, I just want to stop here and say, please do not start hyperventilating. Please do not start getting paranoid. We can help. That's what we're here for. But we can't help unless people are willing to face the facts. Part of the problem, 20, 25 years ago, kids were being trafficked back then, and they would be arrested and they would be sent to jail. Unfortunately, this is still happening on a lesser scale, but it's getting better. My point here is that police have been educated. They are aware of what it looks like, so they're able to stop it as in not arrest the girls and actually send them to a safe home. Paranoia is not the answer. Awareness and prevention is the answer. Go ahead, let's do the left blue box first. So your guess. 1 in how many kids who are ages 9 to 12 share their own nudes? And then if you have a guess for the second one, for kids ages 9 to 12, who shares more, boys or girls? Okay, so we have a guess 1 in 10. That would be better than the statistic we actually have, which is 1 in 7. So as far as the second slide, who shares more, boys or girls ages 9 to 12? It is actually boys. However, once we switch to the next age bracket of 13 to 17, then we have girls sharing more than boys in that age. So I think the problem is just that it's so common. I mean, that 1 in 7 kids ages 9 to 12 are doing that it's so mind-boggling. It's horrifying. So yeah, we know about 3 to 6 hours a day. Okay. The problem is it doesn't have to be hours for a kid to be scarred by a video on pornography. So how can a kid access pornography online? It can be through social media, it can be through video games, and through the internet, obviously. Okay, social media. This can be through so many ways. So it can be linked in a chat, it can be sent in a message. Video games, same thing. Quite often, predators will link a link to pornography in a video game chat that will take the kids there, and then they're just scarred from that. Of course, kids can also just look it up on YouTube. If they have access to YouTube, they can look it up, and I'm just gonna say nothing good is gonna come up. Let me just go over a couple more quotes. These are also quotes that were sent to Colin Kartchner, the guy who went around to schools and he tried to limit social media access. So one young boy told him, "I was 10 when my parents gave me a tablet. I was pretty much addicted to porn at 11 years old." One thing we don't want to do is we don't want to blame parents. However, we do want to, like going forward in the future, we want to, when I say we, I mean our organization, we want our culture to be like, okay, parents, you are responsible for your kids. However, we don't want to blame parents. There's a fine line to draw there. So I just want to clarify that as we're talking about this. This is a quote from a mom who contacted Colin. She said, "I have a 12-year-old daughter. Cell phones are allowed at lunch at school. My daughter has to sit by 12-year-old boys looking at Pornhub and commenting on it." Another mom told him, "My son was shown a porn video at lunch. He's in 4th grade." Let me just go back to YouTube. I know a lot of people will be like, well, YouTube Kids, that's okay. I'm sorry, it's not. YouTube Kids has just so many issues, it's not even funny. So first of all, it can be the ads. The ads can show really inappropriate things ranging from political issues to violence to sexual innuendos. Another issue is that people who have way too much spare time on their hands and are really sick will take videos who are uploaded by moms, and they will insert really inappropriate things in them. And I hate it when I'm in a Facebook group and I see a mom comment, "Oh, I put this video on for my kid," and I walk out of the room. And then I hear something that I really don't want to be hearing, and I walk back in the room. Something really inappropriate in the video. And it's 5-10 seconds and it's gone. But her child had still seen it. Let's talk about social media a little bit more. So TikTok is especially bad. TikTok and Snapchat. One young boy said, he was like, "I downloaded Snapchat." He was like, "The worst mistake of my entire life." He was like, "I was bombarded with pornography," because he puts on there, "I am 15 and I'm a boy." And so Snapchat is like, "Okay, user demographic, this is what we're going to show you." Unfortunately, TikTok does the same thing. So a mom set up TikTok as if she were a child. Hint, predators can also do this, but she was doing it for a good reason. And she was like, "I want to see what the explore page looks like if I'm a child." Now, what it looked like was videos glorifying stripping, encouraging girls to take up that as a career, videos encouraging OnlyFans, talking about pornography, soft pornography, and videos of girls under 10 twerking. That was her explore page when she signed up as a child on TikTok. Let's go back to video games. Okay, so Pornhub actually collects information on where does traffic come from? That goes to their site. So from video game consoles alone, we have 34.7 coming from Xbox games, and then 51.5 are coming from PlayStation games. Now, this doesn't mean that 51% of overall searches for pornography are coming from PlayStation. It just means that of video game usage, 51% of that is from PlayStation. I know a lot of people, they hear this and they're like, okay, yes, kids see pornography. Yes, it is bad. Yes, it does scar them mentally. And yes, they have nightmares and they have flashbacks. And they have a hard time getting those images out of their head. But this is what they want to say. They're like, but it doesn't actually affect them in real life and it doesn't actually affect other people. And I'm just going to say no, okay? I am going to dive in with a horrific example because I think you can probably agree that yes, it does affect objectifying women. It does affect future relationships. But I think something you may not know is that one doctor, he's reported saying that he has had to treat young girls for internal injuries from what's being done to them because boys are copying what they're seeing on Pornhub. These are minors. He's talking about minors. And this is happening because boys are trying to copy what they're seeing on Pornhub. I'm sure you probably agree. No parent is like, I want my kid to start with. He was super realistic. And he was like, what is the appropriate age to hand your child a smartphone? Like, whatever age, you're okay with them to start looking at porn because that's what's going to happen because of their age, because of what they're looking at online, social media and video games. I'm not saying they're looking for bad things. Just being on Snapchat and TikTok, the algorithm is going to throw certain things at them. Like I mentioned, the 15-year-old boy on Snapchat, he was thrown certain things just because of his age and gender. This is not to blame the parents. This is not to blame the kids. This is to blame the system and just realize this is what is happening, and let's not be part of it. So this is the third risk. So the first risk was bullying. Second was exposure to porn. The third risk from online access is exposure to predators or connecting with predators, however you want to think about it. You know, for all of us, it's really easy to develop a friendship online. Most of us probably have friends we met online or spouses we met online, or we stay connected with people online from people in high school or people at work. So think about this from your kids' perspective. They're like, well, my mom has friends on Facebook. I talked to my grandpa on video call. They're living in a technological world that maybe we didn't as we were growing up. We've learned to adapt to it as much as we needed to and as much as we wanted to. But for kids, it's a little bit different. Like they're like, this is the world. So from their perspective, they're like, oh, people online, people in person, same thing. So they get a message from a kid online. This kid says, oh, I go to your school. Maybe it's a big school, maybe they don't know them. I'm new to town. I don't know many people. Can we be friends? And maybe they'll just start out by asking questions like, what's your name? How are you doing? Where do you live? What games do you like to play? And then it'll move on to things like, have you ever tried doing such and such inappropriate activity that you shouldn't be talking about? Maybe they'll ask, do you have a boyfriend or girlfriend? Why don't you? Do you want one? And then it just keeps going and going. Maybe they ask for a picture. Then they ask for another one. Then maybe you've gotten down the road and it's an inappropriate picture now. Somebody has sent an inappropriate picture. And then it turns into the kid saying, I don't want to talk to you anymore. And then the predator comes out and says, well, you know what? I know where you go to school. I know where you live. I know who your friends are. I know who your family is. And I'm going to send them this one picture unless you do what I say. This has actually happened. This conversation example, these are pulled from an example that a police officer in the US, he leads an online child sex crime unit in Houston, and he was talking about how it plays out in a chat. Let's talk about predators and traffickers. So when I think about a predator, I'm thinking about somebody who spends time looking for ways to manipulate and exploit people. A pedophile is going to be somebody who looks to do that more in private. They're going to exploit children in private. Traffickers will do it publicly, in a sense. I mean, they're advertising their victims, they're meeting up with the buyers, they're literally going into hotels, they're using Uber. They are doing it in public. So that's really the main difference between them. So a pedophile, which is, we got the left side, pedophile average is about 150 victims before they're caught. And I know that number is staggering. Some statistics will say it's about 20 girls before they're caught. Some statistics will say it's about 200 boys before they're caught. It's so hard to say because it's very hard to catch them. And unfortunately, I personally don't think that the penalties are sharp enough. So let's just stop here. You guys drop in the chat, what do you think should be the penalty for pedophiles and traffickers? Let's have some fun with that. I'll go to the next slide. You guys are thinking of some fun penalties. Let me just tell you this quote while you're dropping that. So a doctor, she's a psychologist, she spent a lot of time interviewing child molesters, pedophiles, traffickers who had been arrested and had been convicted. And she must have like a mind made of steel, but she wrote a book about this. So this is a quote from one of the guys that she interviewed in prison. He said, "I'm going to do this," meaning molesting children, "the best I can, and I'm not going to stop until someone puts a bullet in my head." This was a very common pattern that she was seeing. She found out that child molesters and predators are 3 times more likely to commit a crime when they're released. But they'd boast to her. They would talk about how good they are about fooling pastors and teachers and principals and parents. This is a common problem. Let's say, actually, this is pulled from multiple real stories. So we have a deacon in the church. He is arrested, or let's say it's a youth pastor, deacon or youth pastor. They're arrested for inappropriate dealing with a young girl. The church splits. Because why? Because half of them are like, he's such a great guy. He would never do that. I know him. He's been over at our house. We've had him over for dinner. He's played with our kids. He's so good with them. He wouldn't do that. And then the other half support the victim. Clearly, that's a huge problem in the church and in the culture where people won't believe what's going on. Now, this is really great because we have movies where we have these really good characters and everybody wants to believe that they're the protagonist and they're save the day, and then there's a twist. I'll just give a couple examples. These are just, well, I mostly watch movies with my kids, so the first examples I thought of were from kids' movies. So if you've seen Big Hero 6, there's this scientist guy, and you think he's awesome. He's like this professor, and then it turns out he's a really horrible person. Maybe you've seen Abominable, which is a very cute movie about the abominable snowman, and well, similar scientist who turns out to be a rogue scientist at the end, and she turns into be this horrible bad guy. Individuals who are overly friendly. Yes, sorry, I was reading from the chat, but yes, it's definitely a good point. We'll get back to that, yeah. Then probably more adult movies. You guys have probably seen The Matrix. What about Cypher in The Matrix? That was quite a twist there. Maybe you've seen Training Day. Denzel Washington. Yeah, I can't. The first time I watched that, I was shocked. But I think it's good that we have these movies because it's able to give us a reference. It's like a mirror back to real life, because we're like, okay, yeah, people are like that. There are people who pretend to be the heroes, and then it actually turns out they're the one. It's really good if we can keep that in mind. This is good for parents to know, or hey, tell friends who are parents. So I personally have not posted pictures of my kids online for years now, probably about 8 years now, because I don't know everybody who is my friend on Facebook. I don't know them in person, and I don't even know them well enough to be like, yeah, I trust them with pictures of my kids. I do not know everybody who follows me on Instagram. Number two is a really good thing to know. If you need help doing this, just we can talk about this later, but you do want to turn off the location on your camera, because if you post a picture without having turned off the location on your camera, if you post a picture taken in your home, somebody can figure out, oh, that's their home. It's a big one to do. Number three, risk of pedophiles using your child's picture. Two problems with that. They can use the picture to try to find your child in person, and that can be, some parents will actually post a picture by their front door with their child holding a little chalkboard saying, this is my name, this is my teacher, this is the grade I'm in. Don't do that. You know not to do that. Please don't ever do that. And the second one is really creepy. So this is actually called digital kidnapping. So what they can do, there are actually two subsections to this. One is they'll just take the picture and then maybe they'll just share it. There are actually, disgustingly enough, pedophile websites where they share photos of kids. And this, unfortunately, things like they really like pictures of kids in swimsuits or kids taking a bath. And I know that's, parents, like, we can't even comprehend thinking of kids like that. We can't. But we have to think of, do we want our child's picture on that website? And if you don't, then don't put it online, because we can't trust the system. So the one issue is pictures. The other is a potential video. What they actually can do, disgustingly enough, is take the face from the photo and then use it in a pornographic setting, so they can actually put it on a video. I've actually had this done to me. This was like I don't know. They figured out how to do it a couple years ago, and somebody hacked my Instagram and did it. I was like, okay, cool, whatever. Now, see, I do not care. Children will care, because let's say, and I'm sorry, this is actually an actual story that I'm going to bring up. So this happened to a young girl, and some boys at her school were looking at Pornhub. They saw this video of her. They thought it was her, and it wasn't. But she had to deal with the bullying from that because of this. So if parents in any way can prevent that, let's do that. So one thing, I know parents are like, I really want to share pictures with my aunt and my uncle and my great-grandparent and all my friends. I know you do. I know. Me too. I know it's fun because your kids are cute. But what I would really recommend is just set up like a group messaging. And if you don't want all the notifications from people liking the picture, you can set up like Signal, you can set up Band, you can set up GroupMe. There are different things to do. If you want ideas, if you want help, just let us know afterward. But I would really recommend don't share pictures of kids online. Moving on to the fourth risk. How do traffickers connect with children online? The most common myth I've heard is that people are scared of traffickers kidnapping their kids off the street. Now, yes, this does happen, and yes, absolutely be aware of this. But actually, Thorn, another nonprofit, they've done a lot of research on this, and they found that in the United States in 2019, 55% of the children who were trafficked met their trafficker online. This would be through one of these platforms, social media, or through video games. I know 55%, it's horrific. So rough statistics tell us that maybe 4% of trafficking is actual kidnapping. About 55%, this is in the United States, about 55% is meeting online. And then we have another really horrifying statistic, which says that about 40% of children who are trafficked by their own parents. Now, I don't want to get into this too much because you're here to protect your kids. You're not here because this is an issue for you. But This is actually an issue in the United States. You may have heard of this happening internationally. Parents selling their children to pay off debt, or maybe child marriage, or you've heard of that internationally. Now, how it works in the US is maybe you have a single mom and she can't pay the rent. And so her landlord is like, well, I'll take off the next month's rent for you if you let your daughter, or maybe she's addicted to drugs and she trades her daughter for drugs. That these actually are real stories, and I'm not going to give too many more specifics, but it is unfortunate how often this happens in the US. And the really horrific thing about this is it is so hard to spot because that's not what movies show. And so people aren't looking for that. They're looking for something like Taken. So yeah, just another thing to be aware. Movies about trafficking don't always show the truth because it's hard. It's really hard to show like the multifaceted horrificness that is out there. So traffickers connecting with kids online. All right. So traffickers were pretty much always on the lookout for their next victim. The girls and boys that they are trafficking are considered replaceable. The lifespan is very short for people who are trafficked. One of the things people don't understand is that traffickers and predators, they want to move communication to a different platform that they feel is more secure. If you have ever had a guy start texting you or start messaging you maybe on Facebook and he's like, hey, can we move it to WhatsApp? That's what traffickers are doing. Because why? Well, the creeps who want to move it to WhatsApp do that because it's super hard for police to actually get to the transcript of what's going on WhatsApp just because of the privacy restrictions. And unfortunately, the same thing goes for, I believe, Facebook, Instagram, and Snapchat, of course, can disappear in 24 hours. So that's just horrific. That makes it a really, really bad place for bullying and sending nudes to happen. Even besides the chat feature where they can talk to their victims, let's imagine that a trafficker is looking at a young girl's Instagram page, Facebook page, Snapchat, whatever. Well, what are they looking for? They're looking for, what are they interested in? How can I start a conversation about what they're interested in? They want to see, do they look happy or not? Do they have solid connections? Do they look insecure? Do they look lonely? Are they going to be open to a stranger sending them a DM? Those are things they're looking for. So I know I have a couple more stats I wanted to go through. So you ladies, you have probably heard a mom on Instagram. She posed as an 11-year-old, and you probably heard within 1 week she had 52 men contact her. She said within the first 2.5 hours she had 11 men send her inappropriate pictures and request her, the supposed 11-year-old, for inappropriate pictures within 2.5 hours. Now, Instagram has recently set up supposed restrictions, so a child has to follow another account for that account to be able to message them. That doesn't really solve the problem at all, in my opinion. And of course, video games, they're supposed to be like child friendly, they're supposed to be child only, but they're literally videos on YouTube that show you how to hack into that game and play as a child. So also not great. If you're a parent, is there one of these that like most concerns you? For me as a parent, I have 3 boys. So I am personally most concerned about the pornography and the exposure to pedophiles, because I personally feel like exposure or potential connection with a predator is more likely than a connection with a trafficker, simply because there are more pedophiles than traffickers. So those are the 2 I'm most concerned about. Now we want to get on to some positive things. No, best defense is good offense. That's what I meant, sorry. So traffickers and predators, they're exploiting the fact that the children that they are meeting online are lonely, they're insecure, they have a really low sense of self-worth, they don't feel loved. That's actually the main common denominator for all children who are trafficked. So the best way to combat that is for them to feel secure in family, for them to feel secure in their home, secure with their friends. So it's getting harder for parents nowadays because we want to have a good relationship with our kids, but we've got to work. We've got to make enough money to feed them. So it's really hard doing that, and I understand that. So the number one thing is ensure that they feel secure. And part of that is going to be just support them. Part of it is going to be find that balance between freedom. They want freedom. Find that balance between freedom and security for them. The second part is just teaching them. We don't want to be the kind of parent who's like the helicopter parent, and we certainly don't want to be controlling, but we want to teach them, technology in and of itself is not a bad thing. I mean, there's so many people who work online, graphic design, cybersecurity, website design, so many things that they're valuable. And we want to be able to teach children that technology is a good thing. And it's really just how it's used and who's using it and what for. Boundary setting, this is going to look different for every family because kids' ages are different. Your schedules are going to look different. So what it looks like for me personally, for our family, is I don't actually let them have iPhones. As they get older, I will probably let them have, there are certain phones that allow you to text and call, but they don't allow for any internet access. So it's really, it's good because the child is able to contact their friends and they're able to call you when they need a ride, but they're not spending 3 to 6 hours on social media a day. Might also look like, setting. For video games, we don't do video games. What we do is like family movie night. So maybe we'll do that once a week or something. Let's just go back to building a relationship. What does this look like for parents? The top thing on our list is time with the parent. And I know we always want to do like quality time versus quantity time. I've honestly found that it's not really that we don't want to create a dilemma like that, quality versus quantity. What I found is the number one thing is if your child comes up to you and you're doing something and they want to talk to you, you drop what you're doing. And I know that sort of goes in the face of what everybody talks about. They're like, well, quality versus quantity or whatever. But I've found that, yeah, I can spend all day with my kids and I'm distracted because I'm on my phone or I'm doing work or I'm doing a project or I'm cleaning or whatever. But if I'm not actually there for them, really present mentally and emotionally, that is the number one thing that I have found to be the most detrimental if I don't do it and the most important if I do it. This is I'm going to recommend a book. It is called Raising Humans, Not Robots. It's by Gabby LeBrew, and I can probably email you guys the link for that afterward. This came out, I think, 2021, maybe last year. Anyway, I actually helped the lady edit it, and she had some really, really good points. So I'm just bringing up some points from the book to talk about here. So she really recommends being open with your kids and saying, like, when did you talk to your kids about using internet? And then talk to your kids like, when should we discuss screen time usage? And then talk about with your partner, like, when should we start discussing internet dangers? Should we discuss that just us? Should we discuss it with the kids? How open should we be about it? And of course, this is going to depend on each family and the age level, because you don't want to give too much scary information to young kids, but you also want to be honest with kids who are getting older. So these are also a couple things from the book. So these are the 4 risks that she has here. Content, we've talked about. Disturbing content. Contact, we've talked about that. Conduct, we've also talked about that. And then contract, maybe agreeing to things they don't understand. This may happen when you have a 3-year-old buying $5,000 worth of something off Amazon or off the Apple Store, which may or may not have happened to some people. And then these are just some questions for parents to interact with kids. Can you show me how your favorite game works? And definitely for older kids, what does your digital footprint say about you? You want to talk to them about how is this going to look for your resume? Because employers do look at your social media and do Google you online. Let them think about, should you trust everyone online? And then another good question is like, how do you know if you've had enough? Maybe your neck's getting sore, maybe you're getting thirsty, your back is aching. Just to help kids know, like, get offline. Now, me personally, I would only have to ask my kids this if they're doing schoolwork, maybe they're doing their class online. And I know I may be stricter than most, but I do not see any point in allowing access to social media. I'm gonna skip ahead through this because I know we're getting close to the end. So we do want to talk about the fact of how a lot of parents view kids having an iPhone. And I hear so many parents say this, and I know it's hard because they'll say, well, my kid wants an iPhone because all their friends have one. Or they'll say, if I don't give them an iPhone, I'm going to be seen as, this horrible parent. All the other parents are doing it. Or maybe it's just, I want them to have fun. I'm going to give them a really nice present for their birthday. But the fact, and kids will say this to their parents too, like, you're so mean, you're leaving me in a stone age if I don't have an iPhone, if I don't have social media. What we really want to do is take a step back. That's why, the subtitle for this class is Heritage Hope. It's parenting through the digital age. It's not parenting in the digital age, because we want to be able to realize that the digital age is just another stage in history that we have to go through. We want to keep our head above the water and be able to see history around us. So what parents are trying to do, the parents who don't give their kids access to social media, what they're doing is they're closing one door, just one. Rapidly leads downhill. It has no guardrails and it has hairpin turns. And there's no way to protect your kids or for you to keep safe if you go through that door. You could tell your kids that. But you close that one door, what you're doing is you're leaving open hundreds of other doors. Now, the other doors, you leave them open, they're going to have an uphill climb through them. They're going to be tough, they're going to be rocky. But these other doors, they can be something like career skills, hiking, hobbies, friendship, in person, sports, art, whatever it is. But these things that the parents are leaving the door open to, all of them bring a sense of accomplishment, and they're going to bring you personal growth instead of the time suck that social media is and the detrimental aspects that it brings. We really, if there's one thing that you take away from this, if you know people who are struggling and they're trying to decide, should I get my kid an iPhone or not? Try to keep this mental image in your head, because this is the number one thing that we hear parents struggling with. Just the sense of conformity to the culture, the peer pressure that the kids are dealing with and the parents are dealing with subsequently as well. So unless you guys are currently having issues with teenagers, I'm actually going to skip this, but this is great info to have. If you know people who are having issues with their teenagers and online, please feel free to reach out. We would be happy to help. There's a lot of information that we can share, like what kind of phone to get instead. Maybe the child has explicit content online that they were forced into sharing. How do you deal with that? So do let us know if you need this or if you want to share this with anyone. But we're going to go ahead and skip for now. A quick overview of monitoring systems. So there are different ones. Some are ones called Canopy, ones called Custodia. There's Covenantize, there's Bark. So there are a lot of different ones. So a monitoring system is basically what parents will put in place. They'll give the kid an iPhone and then they'll put on this app or install this software. And what it'll do is basically track the kid's activity online. The overall problem is that it's viewed as an easy solution, and there is no such thing as an easy solution when you're raising kids. That's the number one problem. The second problem is that it assumes a bad relationship between parents and children. Like, let's take a step back and let's imagine, okay, your husband got you a new phone and he puts on this app to allow him to sting because he doesn't trust you enough for you to talk to him about it. Now, what would we say when we're looking at that? We would be like, whoa, one, that's super controlling of him. And number two, let's say he didn't put, no trust. Let's say he didn't put the app on, but he didn't feel like he could talk to you about it. What does that show us? That shows you there's no trust there. Yeah. Big issue that I'm seeing here is parents are like, well, people in general, We're having a hard time seeing kids as people because we're not seeing relationships as we would see them between two adults. I'm not saying you treat kids like adults. That's not what I'm saying in all aspects. But we are having a hard time seeing relationally, just seeing how disturbing this is. So a couple things. We have gone over these. Don't put kids' pictures on social media. And if you need these, we can definitely go over these in more detail. But I'll just go over this one because I see this a lot. Do not play those games on social media where they're like, so what street did you live on as a child? What was your favorite pet's name when you were 5? What's your favorite movie? What's your oldest sister's middle name? Like, come on. We know those are security questions. Don't answer them. I don't even know who starts circulating those, but just don't. They're funner things to do. So the major things that we want to talk about, and I know we've gone over a lot of negative stuff. Pretty much, there are predators. They will try to contact kids if kids are not protected from them. And you cannot trust big tech to protect your kids. So what does that say? Parents, it's your job. Okay. With that said, we can't just have this negative of parents treating kids, well, like we talked about the monitoring. We can't just put on this system. That's not going to work. We need to, instead of just dealing with the negative, we've got to create a positive instead. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but let me just go over a couple more specific things here. So specific things that kids need. So I've pulled these from 2 different books. And we are working on creating a PDF with like lots of recommended resources. But I've pulled these from a couple books. And these 2 authors agreed that the things kids need are time. Going back to what I said earlier, they need your attention. They need acceptance. And this can just be something as little as your kid comes up to you and they've made this really bizarre thing out of Legos and they love it. And you think it's weird. You can think it's weird, but don't let them know that. They think it's awesome, support them. Whatever it is. I'm using Legos because my kids love Legos. Kids do need traditions. They just need that sort of like mental stability. They're like, okay, Thanksgiving this year, I know we're going to have green bean casserole or whatever it is you make. They need some sort of stability. You also want to celebrate milestones, and whether each family may be different. You may choose to celebrate teeth pulling out or a new grade or whatever it is. But they need that. And they need stories. Stories are so important. Now this can be like audiobooks. We listen to a lot of audiobooks in the car. Also read books out loud at night. I'll read to my kids until I fall asleep and then they wake me up and want me to keep reading. But stories are so important. Good stories. They also need rules. I know that's easy for parents, but try to keep the rules short and then everything else long. Understanding. They need apologies from their parents when they're wrong. And I do hear, especially like the older generation of parents, they'll be like, well, I'm not going to apologize to my kids because then they'll see me as wrong. Well, I think that's not really the important thing. The important thing is that you want to show them that, hey, everybody can be wrong. The important thing is if the parent has done something wrong to the child or in whatever way, you want the child to learn that I am important enough that my parent will apologize to me because the relationship between us is important enough to them that they will apologize to me. That's really important to kids because if the parent doesn't apologize to them, then the kid, they know, hey, they did something wrong. And whose fault is it? And if you don't apologize, they may internalize that guilt on themselves because the parent didn't apologize. And I have seen this. I hear stories about this, so I am focusing on that a little bit. Definitely want to focus on their strengths. One of my favorite verses for raising kids specifically talks about raising your children in the way that they should go. And one of my favorite pastors says, training them up in the way that the child should go means focusing on their strengths. It doesn't mean raise the child up in the way the parent thinks they should go, which is different because a lot of parents will be like, well, I was good at soccer. My kids should be good at soccer too. Not necessarily. We don't want to do that. Last couple things is try to point them outward. This is great to start as young as you can. And I know some nonprofits will not allow kids to volunteer or the parent has to be with them. It depends. But as much as you can, try to get them involved in like community service, ministry, volunteering at church, wherever you can. it's really helpful for kids to be able to, get a little mind shift and do that. You want to offer grace. As I'm going to keep talking about this because kids will internalize guilt if there is not a way out. So offer forgiveness. If they know they've messed up, let them know, yeah, you messed up, but it's okay. Tomorrow's a new day. So you definitely want to focus on that. And this is a quote at the bottom. This is a quote from one of my pastors in Virginia. What he said is, don't focus on being a perfect parent. He said, you want to point your children to a perfect God. And I've always remembered that. I really like that. So I know we're going to have questions soon, but if you want an email after this, we've got a PDF, just like immediate action steps to take, parenting tips, ways to connect with your kids, and then what we are working on creating, which I'm thinking is going to be like either an entire ebook or just like multiple downloads, because to break it up is like a list of hobbies, parenting books, reading lists, recommended movies. I know that's hard to find. Just tips for parenting, more pages to follow, how to talk to kids about trafficking. So many things, so many resources. So we don't want to overwhelm people, but we're going to work on doing that too. Awesome. And if you know any parents who would be interested in this, we're going to keep offering this. We'll be starting to post more reels to Instagram, start doing some YouTube shorts and everything like that. So if there's anything we can do to help parents, that's really our goal. What we want to do is actually create an in-person community where people can find people with similar beliefs. Again, we've mentioned like the number one issue parents are finding is that they're having this peer pressure from their kids that they want a phone because all their friends have a phone. But we do know there are literally hundreds, if not thousands, of parents out there who believe similarly to other parents. They don't want their kids to have a phone and they're doing something different about it. So we're trying to connect all those people. Yeah. Okay, so best email would be info@libertashome.org. I'll drop that in the chat. That'll get to me. And we'll be happy to share any other information with you guys. I'm so glad you were able to join on.